do it whenever. Okay. The final for this class is going to be a Google form. And the good news is that it's all multiple choice. They are not easy multiple choice questions necessarily. You got to do some reading and some thinking. Please don't assume that you're going to be able to go look up the answers wherever while you're taking the test. You've got 90 minutes and there are 48 questions that you must answer. Okay. And like I said, these are not things that you can just Google and get the definition or whatever and move on. Okay. So you're going to have to kind of know what's going on when you sit down and take the test. And that's what this review is for. So let's do it. All right. Like I said, I'm going to tell you what is important about the answer and maybe some of the answers that are wrong and what you got to know about each week as we go. All right. Everybody ready? Final exam review in 3 seconds. All right, question number 1. What is the social contract? Citizens agree to give up rights to be protected. Government never denies your liberty. Citizens agree to do anything the government says, or campaign donations in return for favorable laws and regulations. Or pardon. Very good. The answer is citizens agree to give up some freedoms in return for protection from the government, protection of the rights. Okay, that is from week 2. The only other things that you really need to know from week 2 is you need to understand the idea of popular sovereignty. And I think that's about it. Okay, the social contract according to John Locke and popular sovereignty, and we're good. Okay, from week 2. All right, Kelly, good work. Question 2. What are the unalienable rights identified in the Declaration of Independence? Liberty and justice for all, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, persons, houses, and effects, or life, liberty, and property? All right, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. There were a couple of you that chose life, liberty, and property. This is from week 3. It is really important that you guys can differentiate life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, which is in the Declaration of Independence, and life, liberty, and property, which was John Locke in the Second Treatise. You will be asked about the Declaration of Independence and not about John Locke here. So remember, the Declaration of Independence has life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, not of property. A couple other things that you need to know about the Declaration of Independence too. Okay, so number 1 is life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. Number 2 is that the government gets its power from the consent of the governed, that popular sovereignty thing. And number 3 is that a government that fails to protect citizens' rights must be overthrown and replaced with a government that will protect citizens' rights. If you know those 3 things about the Declaration of Independence, which we talked about in week 3, you're all good. Okay. All right. Ethan moves up. Nice job. All right. A major weakness of the Articles of Confederation was, there were several, it's the major. Government could not raise revenue through taxes and duties. Federal government could not settle disputes between states, did not include a mechanism for their own amendment, or created too powerful chief executive. There will be a couple of Articles of Confederation questions. All right, number 1, yeah, the government could not raise revenue through taxes and duties. For this one, too, you need to know why that was a problem. And the reason it was a problem is because the Revolutionary War, which the colonies had fought to gain freedom from England, was a very expensive war. And the colonies borrowed money, mostly from France, in order to fight that war. And if the colonies were not able to pay that money back, they would not have been seen as a legitimate country by anybody else. So the fact is, they needed to be able to raise revenue to pay their debts. That was very important. Okay, so you know that about the Articles of Confederation. You're in good shape. Symphony moving up. All right. Next question. What was in the Articles of Confederation? An executive branch, a Congress, federal courts, or the ability to collect taxes? Don't ask me about these pictures, by the way. I didn't put them in this show. I have no idea who that guy is. All right, this one's a little bit tough too, but you should understand the structure of the government under the Articles of Confederation was only a Congress. That's all there was a Congress. They could make laws. They had one Congress in which each state had a vote, single vote. There was no executive branch. There were no federal courts. They could settle disputes between the states, but they did that by voting as a Congress. They were ineffectual in that regard. So all they were was a Congress. Think about it this way. What we know about the government is that a government must make laws. That's legislating. They must enforce laws. That's executive. And they must interpret laws. And that's judicial. The only thing the Articles of Confederation could do was make laws. And if you make laws, but you can't interpret them or enforce them, what's the point, right? But you do need to know the structure, and you need to know that there were no checks and balances at all. So things were basically out of control, and under the Articles of Confederation, the government was too weak. All right, Abigail, moving into the picture. Question 5. What did the Federalists believe? In independent rights, a weak central government, no taxation, or a strong central government? All right, very good. A stronger central government. Okay, so there are 3 things really that you have to know about what the Federalists wanted. Number 1, they wanted the Constitution, the one we have now. Okay. Number 2, they wanted that Constitution to create a stronger government. They believed that the Articles of Confederation, the government was too weak, because it was. All right. And number 3, they believed that the Constitution system of separation of powers and checks and balances would keep the government from violating the rights of the citizens. All right. So they believed that even though the government was more powerful under the Constitution, it would be okay because of separation of powers and checks and balances. That's the Federalists. Okay. Kelly moving up. Symphony stays on top. Nice job. Number 6, the Anti-Federalists argued for a strong central government. States should lose their dominance, make the government stronger, or a Bill of Rights guaranteeing individual freedom. All right, very good. The Bill of Rights. So there's 3 things you got to know about the Anti-Federalists. Number 1 is they did not want the Constitution. and they didn't want a strong government. They wanted a weak government. They wanted to fix the Articles of Confederation, is what they wanted. Okay, the second thing the third thing is, so first thing, they did not want the Constitution. Second thing is they did not want a stronger government. And the third thing is, if they were going to get that, they did insist upon, they demanded this Bill of Rights. Okay, and we've been studying that Bill of Rights for the last couple of weeks, the first 10 amendments. And you can see they are designed to restrict the power of the federal government that guarantees certain specific rights. Okay, that's all because of the Anti-Federalists. So hugga Anti-Federalist. All right, Abigail, moving up. Very good. Those, by the way, those things are all in week 5. All right. Which article of the Constitution establishes the executive branch? Article 1, Article 2, Article 3, or Article 8? Article 2 it is. All right. This comes from week 6, in which we talked about the preamble. You should probably read the preamble again, but I don't think there are any questions about it. You should definitely know Article 1, Article 2, and Article 3. There is no such thing as Article 8 of our Constitution anyway. You don't really need to know Articles 4 through 7. All right. You should, if you're a great citizen, but for the purposes of this test, you've got to know Article 1, Article 2, and Article 3. And there are several questions on those topics. Okay. So Article 1, the first thing you got to do, legislate. You got to make laws. Article 1, first thing. Second thing you got to do is enforce those laws. Article 2, the executive branch. Okay, the third thing you got to do is interpret those laws. That's Article 3, the judicial branch. But you got to make sure you know which article associates with which branch, those first 3 articles. Right, Symphony on top. Kelly's moving back up. Number 8, something about the Electoral College is comprised of 438 members, 1 per House district, 100 electors, 1 per Senate member, 538 electors, 1 per House district, and 1 per senator, plus 3 for DC, or 270 electors, which equals 1 per degree on rotation in 45 minutes of a traditional clock. Very good. All right, 538 electors. There are several things you have to know about this. This comes from week 7. All right. Number 1, you got to know that number, 538. Okay, 538 electors. Number 2, you have to know where that number comes from. That is, that it is a combination of the House districts, this number of senators, and 3 for DC, because they don't have representatives in Congress, but they still get to vote for the president. Okay, so 538. You need to know that the House of Representatives has districts that are apportioned according to population. Okay, so big states, lots of representatives in the House. Small states, few representatives in the House. And there are 435 altogether. You need to know that. You need to know that the Senate is evenly apportioned, 2 senators per state for a total of 100, no matter how big the state is. Each state gets 2, okay? You got to know those things. Also, you need to know that it takes 270 electors to earn the presidency. Not 269, that's half. That's a tie. We don't want a tie. We need 270 electors to win the presidency. The Electoral College, by the way, is voting on Monday for this last presidential election, for whatever that's worth. All right, that gets us through the Electoral College, and Symphony's on top still. What does the executive branch do? Write law, interpret law, pass law, or enforce and execute law? All right, very good. Enforces and executes laws. All right, remember, legislative rights or makes laws. Okay, the executive enforces or executes laws. That's executive means to execute. Okay, and then the judicial branch interprets the law. Okay, those three ideas will help you a bunch. Kelly back on top. What are significant presidential powers? The president is head of the executive branch. The president is the commander in chief. The president is responsible for dealing with foreign policy, all of the above. All right, very good. All of the above. All right. So you should know something about the president's powers. All this stuff about the executive branch comes from week 8. The president has the power to administer. That's that administrative power to run the executive branch. The most important power of the president is to faithfully execute the laws of the land. Okay, that's it, to faithfully execute those laws. All right, that's number one. The president is also, of course, the commander in chief of the nation's armed forces, and the president is largely responsible for dealing with foreign policy. So those are all important powers. There are a couple of others, but they aren't solely the power of the president. So we need to talk about those. All right. And again, that's from week 8. All right. How are the powers of the president limited by the Senate? Must confirm appointments, must confirm treaties, 2/3 vote, must introduce revenue bills, or both A and B. All right, both A and B it is. So the president does have appointment power. That means the president gets to choose federal court judges, gets to choose ambassadors, gets to choose members of the president's own cabinet, but those people cannot actually serve until the Senate confirms them. That is the way that the Senate checks the power of the president. Bear in mind, this is a Senate power. It is only the Senate, not the Congress completely, only the Senate. So these are unique powers to the Senate. And the same is true for confirming treaties. Remember that 2/3 vote thing for treaties. All right, 2/3 vote. If there's a question about the number, it's probably about 2/3. Okay. But the president can negotiate treaties, foreign policy, but the Senate must confirm them. So those are two unique powers of the Senate to check the president. A unique power of the House of Representatives, so this only happens in the House of Representatives, is to introduce revenue bills. All right. And you got to know that thing. That is a unique power of the House of Representatives, not the Senate, to introduce revenue bills. And you got to know why. And the reason for that is that the founding fathers wanted revenue laws, bills about taxes and spending money, to start in the House that is most immediately responsible to the people. So the House of Representatives, excuse me, the House of Representatives is elected every 2 years. The Senate every 6 years. So every 2 years, the House of Representatives has to justify their jobs. If they're making tax laws or spending a bunch of money that people don't like, the people can get rid of them in 2 years. All right. So the founding fathers wanted them to make those choices first, so that they had to be responsible to the people. All right. If it was the Senate where those bills started, the people would have to wait 6 years to get rid of the senators that are spending their money. They wanted only 2. They wanted to be as fast as possible. All right. So unique powers of the Senate, unique powers of the House. Autumn moving up. All right. Number 12. Let's talk about the legislative branch. Is 9 justices and interprets laws, enforces laws and has a president and vice president, makes laws and is made up of 2 houses, the House of Representatives and the Senate, or created the Constitution. All right, this is good. It makes laws, and it's made up of the House and the Senate. There are 2 houses of Congress. All right, so you need to know that structure: the House of Representatives and the Senate. Okay, I'm going to give you a few things you got to know about this. First, you got to know that that means that it is bicameral, and if you're not familiar with that word, you should be. That means 2 houses or 2 rooms. Okay, so the House of Representatives, 435 members, they're over here. We got the Senate, there's 100 members, different group of people, they're over there. They have to work together. That's a bicameral Congress. You got to know that. Okay, the next thing you got to know about the way the Congress is made up is you got to know the qualifications necessary to be in the House and the Senate, and hey, throw the president in there for good measure. Okay, again, all that stuff is in week 9. Okay, you have to know the role of each house in impeachment. The House of Representatives has the sole power of impeachment. Impeachment just means to make an accusation. The Senate then has the power to try that impeachment. Right? So the House makes the accusation, the Senate has the trial. You got to know that. Okay. You should know that the president or anybody else can be impeached for high crimes and misdemeanors. You should know that it takes 2/3 of both houses of Congress to override a presidential veto. Okay. But if the president vetoes a law, it can be overridden. Okay. So the president checks Congress by saying no to laws he doesn't like. But Congress can say, check the president by saying, oh, yeah, sorry, we don't need your signature 2/3. Okay. All right. So you got to know those things about the legislative branch. And those are from week 9. All right, Kelly's still on top. This is competitive. You guys are doing good. All right, number 13. What are implied powers of Congress? The power of ex post facto, powers set aside by the U.S. Constitution, powers not specifically listed in the Constitution, Superman's powers. Probably not that. All right, very good. These are powers, implied powers are not specifically listed in the Constitution. This is from week 10. And there are just a couple things you got to know about week 10. Okay. Implied powers are powers that are not specifically listed in the Constitution. You got to know that. You got to know that implied powers do come from the necessary and proper clause. Okay, so remember that, the necessary and proper clause. And you've got to know that there are expressed or enumerated powers that are specifically listed in the Constitution. Okay, so expressed or enumerated are specifically listed, and you got to know that that's in Article 1, Section 8. We've been talking about that all year. Article 1, Section 8. Okay, got to know those three things from week 10. From week 11, you've got to know about the power of ex post facto, which is not a power. Okay, week 11 is about power that Congress or the states does not have. And of those, the one you really, really got to know is that neither can make an ex post facto law. And an ex post facto law, and again, this is from week 11, is a law that makes something you already did when it was legal, illegal, and punishing you after the fact. All right. So if it's legal now and you do it, Congress cannot make a law making it illegal and punish you for doing it back when it was still legal. That's ex post facto. So Congress will never take away your guns because you bought them when they were legal, and to do so would be an ex post facto law. Okay. Now, never mind the Second Amendment. They can't make stuff you did legally illegal and then punish you for doing it when it was legal. Okay, that's not going to happen. All right. That gets us on to the judicial branch. And this is review of review. We did this just yesterday. The judicial branch makes laws, interprets laws, enforces laws, or creates states. That's from like 8 minutes ago. All right, and interprets the law. Very good. We've been talking about that. So what does it mean to interpret the law? We need somebody to read it and to figure out for once and for all, and so everybody agrees what that law means. All right. So, and it isn't as obvious as, well, you've read the Constitution. It doesn't mean the same thing to everybody. Okay. And the same is true with laws. All right. Nice job, Kelly. So interpreting the law is important. This is from week 12. Judicial review does what? Reviews laws before Congress votes on them, can declare laws or executive actions unconstitutional, passes laws, or enforces laws. All right, very good. The judicial review, this is also from week 12. If you guys are comfortable with week 12 and felt good about the test yesterday, you'll probably be okay with it on Tuesday too. That it's not wildly different in any way. But you do need to understand the concept of judicial review, which is that the court can look at the actions of the executive or the laws made by the legislative and determine that those things are unconstitutional and thus declare them void. That means Congress makes a law, takes away our rights. The Supreme Court can look at it through the process of judicial review, say, yeah, I'm sorry, that is no longer a law. It's unconstitutional. And you do need to know that that power of judicial review was initially determined by the Supreme Court case Marbury versus Madison. Okay, so you should understand that connection. Okay, and again, that's all from week 12. Symphony on Fire, but it's Kelly's up there too. It's close. It's close. What does the First Amendment protect? The right for states to have militias and to bear arms, to protect citizens from cruel and unusual punishment, freedom of speech, religion, press, petition, and assembly, or the right of people above 18 to vote. Very good. Unanimously, those 5 freedoms of the First Amendment, that's from week 13. And you should definitely know those 5 freedoms, and you should probably be pretty comfortable with the 2 parts of the freedom of religion too, just for giggles. Okay. The Establishment Clause and the Free Exercise Clause. All right. Good job. Number 17, what is the Fourth Amendment? Nobody can be in jeopardy twice from the same thing. People have the right to have their rights to be protected. No soldier during peace must be quartered in a war, or the right to be secure in their home from unreasonable searches. Say paraphrase for sure. All right. And sure enough, almost unanimously, the right to be secure in their home from reasonable search and seizures. All right. About the Fourth Amendment, you really should know the freedom from unreasonable searches and seizures, because that's what it's about. You should know that what are protected are searches of your houses, your persons, your papers, and your effects. And you should probably know the difference between probable cause and reasonable suspicion, okay, or the reasonableness standard. All right. And that was from week 14. Guys, just neck and neck coming down to it. All right. Number 18. Amendment 5 protects the right to be free from cruel and unusual punishment, the right to a fair trial, can't be tried twice, don't testify against oneself, the right to a speedy trial, or the right to keep and bear arms. All right. That's the right to a fair trial. You cannot be tried twice for the same crime. That's called double jeopardy, or to be held twice in jeopardy for the same offense. And the big one, the one you really got to know about the Fifth Amendment, because it's the Miranda thing, is the right to remain silent. Okay. You cannot be forced to testify against yourself. Okay, you don't have to say things that might tend to make you look guilty. And that comes from Miranda v. Arizona, but that's the real big part of Amendment 5 from week 15, otherwise known as last week. Symphony, it's getting tight up there. Number 19, Amendment 6 is the right to freedom of speech, the right to bear arms, the right to a fair trial, can't be tried twice and testify against yourself, with the right to counsel and a speedy and public trial. All right, very good. Once again, from week 15, last week, the Sixth Amendment is the right to counsel, which means lawyer, and that you get a speedy and public trial in the place where the crime is committed. So you need to know, really what you need to know is the right to counsel and the right to a speedy public trial, and you'll be good with the Sixth Amendment. Okay. And again, that's from week 15. I'm moving up. It's down to speed now. Brown v. Board of Education and Plessy v. Ferguson both dealt with separate but equal, the education system, freedom of speech, or public schools. All right, and unanimously separate but equal, right? Plessy versus Ferguson dealt with whether they should be separate train cars for Black people. Brown v. Board of Education dealt with whether there should be separate schools for Black people. They both had to do with the idea of separate but equal, okay? And of course, if you haven't done that assignment, it's got to be done today, or don't bother. All right. Final question. Oh, it's going to come down to speed, I think, but it's really close. Number 21. What date and time is your final in this class? Monday at 7:30, Wednesday at 10, Tuesday at 10:30, or we don't have one? Okay. If you get this question wrong, you will get all of the other questions wrong. This is question number 1. Okay. And the correct answer is Tuesday, December 15th at 10:30 only. Okay. And please, please don't imagine that it is whenever you get around to it or when you get home from work.